let's talk about what Dr. Fauci is doing here with the story we've had from Timcast. This story actually went up earlier this month, a couple weeks ago. Exclusive. Fauci's NIAID funding island of monkeys in South Carolina used for horrific maximum pain experiments. It's a report by Cassandra Fairbanks with sourcing from White Coat Waste Project. Dr. Anthony Fauci and the National Institutes of Health are using an island off the coast of South Carolina to breed monkeys for use in horrific maximum pain animal experimentation. And I must state, I hate doing this, but I had to remove the images from the article because I can't show them on YouTube because they're graphic. But this is what Fauci's NIAID is funding. And I have to wonder why it is. So do you want to break down for us what this primate island stuff is? What is Fauci doing?
Sure. So it's called Morgan Island. It's off the coast of South Carolina. In fiscal year 20, there was 3,521 monkeys on this island. And each year they take about 500 or 600 of them into Fauci's labs. Fauci owns the monkeys. Fauci's division owns these 3,500 monkeys.
Now, hold on. Is this Fauci, like, as an individual, pointing the finger and saying, I want these monkeys moved? Or is it like him signing off on a grant and then throwing it into a pile?
It's unclear. We have FOIA requests in to see what his degree of knowledge is about this directly. But it's been in the news a lot over the years, the fact that this place exists. He probably knows about it. It's a big program of theirs. It's where they get most of their monkeys.
He's signing off on the grants to run this stuff as the director.
Yeah, that's right.
So it'll be interesting to find out to what degree of his involvement is. But carry on. Tell me what's going on.
So they take about 500 or 600 of these monkeys off the island each year, bring them to the labs in Bethesda in Maryland, and then they expose them to infectious diseases, including COVID, including HIV/AIDS, including Nipah virus, Lassa, lots of illnesses that no one in the United States has ever gotten. That
sounds really dangerous.
It's dangerous, and it's also, is that how the NIH should be spending our money on, when there's plenty of neglected diseases that are hurting people? I mean, our position is that the taxpayer should not be funding any of this at all, and the private sector should fund it if it's so important.
Yeah.
So these experiments involve, creating diseases that are causing monkeys pain, hemorrhaging, multi-organ failure, brain damage, and then they completely withhold any pain relief because they don't want it to interfere with their experiment that's looking at how these diseases progress. So some of these experiments are just to see what happens when you create a monkey model of these horrible infectious diseases. And then, we call them maximum pain experiments because they're classified as causing significant pain and distress, and then intentionally withholding the pain relief and just watching these monkeys slowly die or quickly die, depending on
why. So they're doing it because they're like, we want to know what happens with this disease. We want to see how. It reminds me of. I don't want to equate humans and animals to a great degree. I certainly think primates, as a higher intelligent species, there's degrees to which we're willing to tolerate torture of animals and experimentation, but it does remind me. Well, I'll start here first. I was just saying how elites treat us like chicken, like cattle, like just fodder. And we had what was it? Unit 731.
741. Yeah, I can never
741.
remember.
Do you know the Japanese experimental unit, World War II? They would take one example is they took a person and they stuck their hand in like sub-zero temperatures, so it would freeze, and then they shattered it to see what would happen. And then you had the Nazi scientists. Yeah. They were basically, I wonder what'll happen if I do this to a person. Now, interestingly, they say that a lot of the stuff we know about frostbite comes from these inhumane human experiments. And I'm like, at a certain point, my attitude towards freezing to death and losing limbs is kind of like, we know you'll lose your limb and you'll freeze to death if you are exposed. And how about we just have to reconcile the fact that our knowledge of hypothermia must come through emergency accidents. Like, if you want to learn about frostbite, it's going to be due to the fact that someone got lost in the cold and you're bringing them into the hospital to save them and watching what's happening, not subjecting them to these experiments. In this case, maybe scientific progress shouldn't be sped up by the fact that we're taking primates that we bring on an island to basically torture just to see what happens.
And the point is it's not sped up by doing this, right? So our name, white coat refers to the experimenters in their white lab coats, and then waste is a reference to the fact that the NIH on its own website admits that 9 out of 10 drugs that pass animal tests fail in human beings because they don't work or they're dangerous. So we have $20 billion a year spent on animal experimentation. We know that it's failing 90 to 95 to Alzheimer's, for example, Alzheimer's drugs over 99% failure rate. So it's an incredible waste of money. There's very little return on investment for taxpayers. which is why we think that if this stuff is so important, let the Gates Foundation fund it. But we know that there are not private foundations that are going to fund a lot of this stuff because it's completely wasteful, it's irrelevant, and it's not going to help anybody.
And what is it, just lining people's pockets with gold?
Oh, yeah, it's big money. I mean, universities are taking 25% off the top just for administrative fees, and then you've got experimenters driving nice cars and living in gated communities, and it's big business. You got the companies that make the cages, that breed the animals, that, there's a company that runs Monkey Island, and they have a $13.5 million contract.
So we went and saw Ghostbusters Afterlife. Thought it was fantastic. Great movie. And then the next day I was like, let's watch the original Ghostbusters. The original Ghostbusters is about 3 university professors who are doing paranormal research operating off a grant. And then the dean comes in and says, we're shutting down your grant. And all of a sudden they're like, what do we do? There's a scene where Dan Aykroyd is talking to Bill Murray and he says, you don't know what it's like in the private sector. Out there, they demand results. In here, you get grant money, you sit around and do nothing.
Yep.
And I reminded of that because that's it.
Yeah.
There are people who are probably sitting there and their field of research is, nerves and like pain and stuff like that. And they're like, I don't know what to research. Let's just get a bunch of badgers and beat them or something. Yeah. I don't know. And then they get a grant, and then they get hundreds of thousands of dollars to the grant. The university gets their cut. They get paid a 6-figure salary. They get to drive their nice car in their gated community. And just like, hey, we hit a gopher with a hammer, and it died. That's what we learned. Oh my God. I mean, I'm obviously exaggerating, but
you're not that far. You're not that far.
Not that far off.
No, I mean,
these universities are corrupt, man.
Yeah, I mean, we're paying for monkeys to get addicted to nicotine and crack and cocaine at universities. I mean, that's really happening.
Somebody was like, I will take monkeys and give them crack.
Yes.
And then the guy was like, done. Stamps it, signs over the grant. Where does the grant come from? The government? It's taxpayer funded?
All of this is taxpayer funded. You got rodents smoking jewels. You've got
what, jewels? Like
vaping.
The douche flutes.
Vaping.
They got wait, rodents vaping.
Vaping. They build special vaping chambers just for mice and rats. And then they put literal jewels, not some lab-created off-brand. I actually use Juul brand.
Can you just imagine being like a researcher and you're like at a party and you've got like your elbow patches or whatever, and there's like, you're this dude and this hot chick's like, so what do you do? It's like, I give vapes to rats. Like, wait, what? Yeah, we have rats. They vape. And she's like, what? It's my job. Yeah, we have rats vape. She'll be like, that's a really weird job.
I'm gonna walk away.
I really doubt there's these guys like, do they lie about their jobs? Because I can't imagine that impresses anybody. Like they're at their high school reunion, and one guy's like, I was a captain of the high school football team, and I'm actually coaching a college, a small college in, Missouri. And it's like, oh, wow, that's actually pretty good. One guy's like, I'm actually, a senior vice president of marketing firm. Wow, and what about you? I give vapes to rats. It's like,
So this is a classic case of the supply exceeding the demand or whatever. It's a little bit like racism. They're looking for it everywhere. They can't find it. They have to make it up. If you give people a bunch of money, like literally unlimited money for grants for this nonsense, they're going to do stuff like see if rats know how to vape, and they'll spend a bunch of money on it. I don't know why.
That one to me is just like, I'm just imagining South Park doing a bit about like a rat walking up and just vaping, because it's like it's the perfect real world scenario that's right for parody, and it's pure absurdity. Like, why are we doing that? Humans are vaping. We can ask them to come into the university and we have them answer questions and then do a physical, and we have data on people.
Yeah.
And we know that, for years the connection between cancer and smoking cigarettes was obscured because the tobacco companies were relying on animal research, and they're saying, oh no, it's fine. Animals don't get sick from smoking cigarettes. And now we're making the same mistake over again.
Mistake? Or intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to do more aspartame research too. It's
Donald Rumsfeld's favorite particle. But Justin, how much is this? How much of this is scientific research? How much of this is just cruelty?
I mean, I'd argue that it ranges from the stupid to the sadistic, right? So what's happening on Monkey Island, I think most people think is sick and shouldn't be happening. And then you have last week with Senator Joni Ernst for Thanksgiving, we highlighted putting turkeys on treadmills, which was taxpayer funded.
Wait, why?
To see if domestic turkeys ran faster than wild turkeys.
Why do we need to know?
Do they?
Why is that?
I don't remember.
I gotta know. $80 million question.
Now, we got a very serious threat from China. And if we're talking, like ground combat and like a land war in Asia, maybe we need to understand which turkeys can carry the weaponry into the field,
There you go.
either for combat or to bring supplies. Hey, maybe we get a turkey and we put a first aid kit on him and we let him loose.
Cybernetic.
And we're going to, and we need to know which turkey's going to run
Thinking
faster.
the long game. I like
I got to miss. I have no, it may just be, let me put it this way. There's probably some turkey researcher who's sitting in his office right now smoking a cigar going like, these idiots.
Yes,
They have no
definitely.
idea. And he's got like this top secret document about like turkey research.
Yeah.
And he's discovered something in turkey muscle cells.
Yeah.
It's possible we just don't understand something about turkeys on treadmills, but I think they need to justify that. Like they need to explain the goal of letting us understand why a turkey runs faster than another turkey. Because I got to be honest, I got a 410 for turkey hunting, and I don't think it matters how fast a turkey runs.
gotta
It's
leave
not going
that
to run
turkey
faster
if
than
it's-
the.
if it's
you
a
gotta- yeah,
domestic.
right.
Run it.
They're like, the research is completed, and now we're including a warning label on all 410 turkey load that says lead the target slightly more if it's a wild turkey compared to a domestic release turkey.
That's what it's for. Yep.
Like it's paid for by gun companies for hunting.
And that would be fine. Let them pay for it. Let the poultry
Right.
producers pay for it to see who the fastest turkey is. But should taxpayers be paying?
There's like
you know?
the research is because some dude has like underground turkey races. He's using government funding
Yes.
to try and get an edge against the.
Cockfighting, yeah.
He like flies to Mexico and they're like, run, vamos, vamos, and the turkeys are running. I can't imagine.
Tactical
that.
turkeys.
Yeah.
Justin, did you see any of these papers and think, hey, this actually does make sense? I actually do want to know about this. This actually does benefit humanity. Did you ever see any of those particular studies yourself?
Sure, I've seen interesting questions that have been asked. But the question for me then comes back to what is the cost to animals, which I'm concerned about, and then what is the cost to taxpayers? Is this something we should be bearing the burden of, especially when we know how inefficient it is? And to go back to your point about university research versus private research, I mean, there's no incentive in taxpayer-funded animal research to innovate or to solve a problem, because the second you solve the problem, the money gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
So the incentive is to keep going and going and going and not solve the problem and just tinker until you retire.
That's how the government works.
Yeah,
and
it
that's
does.
how Big Pharma works, and the prison industrial complex, and the military industrial complex,
so
and all the
it's-
other
it's
large
how
industrial
nonprofits
com-
work.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
most
yeah.
nonprofits like they don't want to solve their
Colleges,
problems
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
because then they go out of business.
Yeah.
But that's why I think, a lot of this research is just a guy sitting there being like, I need a proposal, otherwise I'm broke. So let me just write up whatever I can and, get it approved.
And I mean, to your point that you made earlier, I mean, some of it, you asked about the point of some of this. I mean, some of it is just tinkering at great expense to humanity, like gain of function, where you're just trying to take a naturally occurring virus and see if you can make it more dangerous.
It seems like a lot of the gain of function stuff was literally just, we need something. Because you either can look at their official explanation. Oh, we did gain of function so that in the event this virus emerged, we'd have a vaccine for it. We could research it. And it's like, what's the likelihood of a virus like that would emerge? Are you literally going to make 50 billion different viruses, hoping that one of them? That's ridiculous. So then it just sounds like they're either trying to weaponize it, or they're just bored and like, I'll do whatever if you give me a grant, I guess. Considering how Fauci circumvented the ban and like changed definitions and tried to weasel his way through this, sounds more like they were just trying to make weapons.
It could be. I mean, EcoHealth Alliance, the intermediary, the nonprofit that was taking the money and sending it to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, it's a U.S. nonprofit. And actually, White Coat Waste was the group that we exposed the link between the NIH and the Wuhan Institute of Virology that money was passing through. They were also applying for money from DARPA from the DoD to do gain of function research, and DARPA denied them, saying this was too dangerous, and they hadn't taken proper precautions to protect against causing a pandemic.
So going to China with very lax safety protocols, and the Chinese government looking over the shoulders of every scientist there is definitely the smart, reasonable thing to do by, of course, Mr. Science Man and Peter Daszak. Peter Daszak, the Bat Lady, I mean, when you delve into and do research into him, holy cow, you find out a lot of, quote, very interesting stuff that we can't even get into on this show. But when we really look into these people, all the warning signs are there on the wall. I mean, I don't know how much research you've done into those individuals well. But is there anything you could say personally yourself from your research about what they have been up to, what they have been involved in?
I mean, Peter Daszak has connections to the Chinese Communist Party going back decades.
Yep.
Literally.
Yep.
He's a darling of theirs, which is why they gave him access, which is why they let him in there, which is why they took his money, and which is why they let him come in and do gain-of-function experiments that maybe could be used for
whatever purposes that they could use, that a military or a rising power that wants to challenge an existing power might potentially use. Again, we're getting into the hypothetical here. We're speculating a little bit, which we need to talk about clearly. But with the information that we got, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to exhibit some of those ideas or to examine some of those ideas under a critical point of view. I'm speaking, of course, very
well, listen, I think
worded.
It would be naive to ignore the fact that the Wuhan Institute of Virology is run by the Communist Party and that it has ties to the PLA. It doesn't mean that what they were doing was intended to be weaponized necessarily, but what they were doing was incredibly dangerous and something that we wouldn't allow to be done here.
Yeah.
And that the Chinese Communist Party is bending over backwards to cover up. And they've deleted the database with their virus database that might lead us to whether they had a virus that was like the COVID-19.
Yeah.
They deleted that in September 2019. The researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology got sick with COVID-like symptoms in November 2019. The wife of a researcher at the Wuhan Institute of Virology died apparently in December 2019.
Jeez.
Before all of that, at the Wuhan Military Games, there was apparently one of the original super spreader events. So everything points to the fact that this laboratory is at the epicenter of the pandemic here. And there's literally no evidence that this thing came out of nature naturally, other than the fact that other pandemics have started that way. And
There have been... So the challenge is, if you're a layman, you're reading the news, there are reports, they do say that the wet market natural emergence theory makes the most sense. But I think, I'll just throw it to Jon Stewart on Colbert's show, when he was like, you have the Wuhan lab that does experiments on SARS viruses, and then a SARS virus emerges across the street from the Wuhan lab, and they say the virus may have originated 1,000 miles away or something. It's like, Jon Stewart was a little more exuberant in his presentation of this, but the way I describe it is, it's like you find somebody laying on the ground face down with a bruise on the back of their head, and someone standing over them holding a bat, and you're going to be like, there's no evidence to suggest this person hit this other person. So I don't know. It's just speculation, guys. The best theory is the guy just fell down. Just walking and he fell down, and that's it. It's like, I mean, I think it's fair to speculate. Can we go look at the cameras? Oh, I'm sorry. The cameras have all been deleted and destroyed. About that. And the guy who was leading the investigation is actually friends with the guy with the baseball bat.
That's crazy.
He's funded. Okay, so we got a problem here.
And he's censoring all the information about this entire incident and how it unfolded? Huh, interesting.
It reminds me of that Family Guy joke where the bar burns down and then the new owner gets all that insurance money. And then I guess the main character's wives ask the insurance guy, they're like, don't you think it's a little weird that he took out an insurance policy for a fire and then had a fire the next day? And the insurance guy goes, no, actually it happens all the time. It's like, don't you think it's a little weird what's happening with the Wuhan virus, the news reports, the refusal to release the data and the genome and stuff? And it's just like, are we supposed to sit back and be like, this is normal? When it's very clearly not, and they're trying to stop us from investigating what happened at the lab. At that point, it's like, look,
I am the science.
Yeah, I am the science. If there's a virus, SARS-CoV virus, that emerges next to a lab that research is on and does chimeric, experimentation, the creation of chimeric SARS viruses, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world to be like, but it probably came across the street from the wet market.
And they've tested 80,000 animal samples, haven't found a single animal who had SARS-CoV-2. Yet you have these viruses that are more than 96% identical in the that they were experimenting on and trying to supercharge there in Wuhan.
Well, now we got Omicron. Joe Biden says that if we don't need to, I love this. The headlines are like, Joe Biden says no lockdown necessary. And I was like, yeah, that's what they said in January or whatever. Joe Biden was like, we're not going to be locking down, doing mandates. And then you actually get to the middle of the story where they bury the lead. And he actually said, for now, if everyone gets vaccinated and wears masks, then they won't be necessary. And then there's this video of University of Michigan, I guess, football game running onto the field, tens of thousands of people. And I'm like, yo, people are not going to follow these rules. They're saying no to this. Now they're saying, Daily Beast is an article that says, we screwed up. This is really a 3-dose vaccine.
Huh?
Bill Maher already came out and said, I took one for the team. I got my shots. I got 2. I'm not doing it again. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the CDC says the definition of fully vaccinated will change to accommodate 3 shots. The Daily Beast is saying it's actually a 3-shot vaccine. So now if you only have 2, you're not fully vaccinated. So Joe Biden's going to have no choice but to be like, look, come on, man. People didn't get vaccinated. So we got to lock down to save lives. I think it's going to be another lockdown like it was last year.
I think you're right. Joe Biden has this habit of doing this thing where he goes, we will all have unity and we will all get along if you do exactly what I tell you to do. And I'm like, how is that unity? We're not getting along if we're just doing what you tell us to do. This was what I was talking about earlier with elitism. He thinks he knows exactly what's right for everyone. So he's just going to say, this is how it's going to be. And if you don't do as I say, you're going to be locked down again and you can go screw yourself because I'm in charge, which is not the way the U.S. was originally intended to run. This is not how it's supposed to be. But we've gradually stepped up what a president can do and say. And it's bad.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about. So you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.